Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, now I'd like to give you a short insight of the Ernst Haeckel correspondence project in order to the following structure. At first, I will give a short introduction to the project data. Then I'll come to the general parts, characteristics of an unusual correspondence, opportunities of digital media, and structuring the content. In the last, more practical part, I'll give an overview of the first steps and early results of the project. Top 1, project data. The extensive and wide-ranging correspondence of the Jena evolutionary biologist Ernst Haeckel, 1834 till 1919, is one of the most important resources for the history of life sciences. Furthermore, it maps Haeckel's complex and multifaceted biographical and scientific involvement in the cultural and social developments of the 19th and 20th century. Considering its relevance and extensive thematic breadth, it is surprising that so far only selected editions of letters from Haeckel's legacy are available. The first issues of them were already published in 1921, and in their intentions, they generally follow the contemporary characteristic style of the great man of history, science history. Accordingly, these texts of letters were cut, adapted to the language use of their times, and sometimes even censored. Also in this period, Haeckel's letters are often published in the anthologies of outstanding scientists. Common to almost all of these editions is a lack of commentary or indexes. Selected editions by today's standards, which have been thematically chosen, have practically only been created in the last 15 years, especially within the Ernst Haeckel House studies. For the above reasons, in 2012, the Ernst Haeckel House of the University of Jena, in cooperation with the German National Academy of Sciences Leopoldina, raised funds for a long-term project of an edition of the complete correspondence of Ernst Haeckel at the Union of the German Academies of Sciences. The project is established with 4 staff positions, 2 research assistants, and a planned term of 25 years that commenced in the beginning of 2013. Due to the huge amount of correspondence, currently nearly 44,000 letters, it was impossible to publish everything in a traditional print edition. Therefore, the strategy of the project was twofold, including firstly, the transcription and online publication of the entire correspondence, means letters and written replies, including metadata, but without any commentary. And secondly, a print edition with commentaries of selected correspondence in 25 volumes, so as to make available the essential correspondence relating to Haeckel's own biography and his scientific, literary, artistic, and political achievements. In my following talk, I'd like to go into a little more detail about the digital side of our dual strategy of publication. Top 2. Characteristics of an unusual correspondence. The archive of the Ernst Haeckel House contains almost a complete personal and scientific legacy of Haeckel's, containing his manuscripts, lecture excerpts, drawings, paintings, and above all, correspondence to and from Haeckel. The letters addressed to Haeckel constitute almost a closed corpus, whereas there are currently about 6,500 letters from Ernst Haeckel to other persons. This disparity between letter and any written reply, in addition to the scattered letters, also has significant structural causes. Due to the reception of Haeckel's conscious attempt to initiate a popularization and ideologization of the biological sciences, the structure of the main corpus of letters is chiefly characterized by a one-sided, non-dialogic form of communication. From the 1890s, This increasingly embraces traditional scholarly and family correspondence. This includes insignificant large numbers of written replies, which due to both their themes and the enormous range of social and cultural backgrounds of the authorships, make tangible this complex and controversial reception of Haeckel in its social, cultural, religious, and political effects. So here you can see the development of letters by year, and here in the 1890s you can see how it increases. This graph doesn't show the quality of letters. This has to be researched. Okay, but we have time for this. So in the next, you can see some of these written replies, which we call fan post. And here you can see a young woman. It's in the style of the Youth movement or Art Nouveau. And here the earth is named Haeckel and Excellence Haeckel and so on. And here the angel comes with the monism. Okay? And here you can see a controversial reception of the evolution of man. He said, "Guten Tag, Herr Vetter," and it's an ape. Okay, and this is the enlightenment of culture. It's a metaphor, and the monism sometimes stands for enlightenment of culture. Okay. Top 3, opportunities. Dealing with huge amounts of content and data. As previously mentioned, the literary deposit of Ernst Haeckel currently comprises approximately 44,000 letters and nearly 10,000 authors of very different social origins. With an average of 3 pages per letter, this corpus would correspond to 130 and 2,000 pages of letters. If one would publish this in full, the traditional print media, even with an optimistic range of about 500 letters per volume, this would have entailed that nearly 88 volumes of a print edition would have been required, which of course is not really feasible. Such circumstances force traditional print editions to be restrictive or limited. But what would have been the alternatives? First, a printed version of an edited and shortened edition of all texts. Such editions, however, illustrate the content only very inadequately, and this approach proved to be not worthy of promotion. Second, a selected edition, for example with the previously mentioned themes, although this alone would not provide sufficient coverage of the full thematic and textual spectrum of the material. If, however, it was supplemented by the full text of letters in digital form without a commentary, thus arises a hybrid, a third way, a symbiosis of both worlds. Here, the digital enrichment proves to be a real advantage in the face of the limitations of any single print strategy. Exposition of networks. In addition to the sheer handling of the material range, digital media also allows for the representation of cross-linked structures between actors, content of letters, and topics in a unique way. Mapping the characteristic reference structures of Haeckel's correspondence with the tools of classical print media would have resulted in large, unmanageable commentaries and bulky registers, which would have been complicated for the reader to recognize and to operate. The advantages of a digital media are particularly evident in its networked representations. So here you can see a very narrow view on Haeckel's networks. It's just the example around the zoological station at Neapel. Here you can see it's difficult to read. Anton Dorn, great, is the founder of the zoological station at Neapel, and Ernst Haeckel. And this is these are the connections between persons, and you can imagine how many connections will come together if we follow all the life or the biographical development of Ernst Haeckel. Top 4, structuring the content. The preparation of the mass and thematic breadth of the material for publication in digital media is by no means trivial. The formal and thematic structuring and fixing of the material plays an important role in addition to any technical requirements. In this context, we encountered the fact that Ernst Haeckel had already prepared his own literary deposit for future generations while still living. The corpus of letters to great extent is sorted by authors and recipients. Nevertheless, in the course of later research in the Ernst Haeckel House, generations of researchers have formed a lot of different thematic bundles that had to be dissolved and now remain only virtually. With regard to the online publication, from the beginning it was all about keeping the mass of material and reference structures under control in any virtual representation. Nothing would have been more fatal than idle links, doubles, or missing content that had escaped access by discrete search inquiries due to mismatches. In addition, such prepared content enables the user to access the wealth of data as well as the full-text search in a structurally guided way. A thematic structuring in the form of indexing content by keywords can make possible access to correspondence for the very first time when explicitly mentioned thematic references in plain text had threatened to remain hidden amongst search algorithms. So here you can see a short selection of keywords given in the letter corpus. It's monism, evolutionary theory, and so on, ethnography. Also cremation plays an important role in discussion of atheism and so on. And if we will go on, we collect more of them, and maybe we can link. We can work it in the online online portal to give in access. For the reasons outlined here briefly, the decision was made for digital publication based on a database solution. Top 5, first steps. Structural measures. The starting point for the edition was an electronic repository that emerged from an earlier project of a printed inventory and search guide named Haeckel Correspondence, an overview of the existing letters in the Ernst Haeckel archive from 2005. In this electronic repository, in the form of a list, contained the major part of Haeckel's correspondence, around 39,000 letters. So here you can see a view inside, and as you can see, there are a lot of question marks, but I will come to this point later on. Okay. Based on this repository, an entity relationship working database with additional levels at first was modeled in-house. The database model shows the logical structure of relationships between the letters and people, places, countries, and institutions, as well as individuals to each other and their relationships to institutions. The structure of the relational links is uniquely fixed by persistent, that means unchanging, identifiers. So here you can see a schematic view of the working database. This was the electronic repository given in form of a list, and we had to put it into a model. It's called entity relationship in technical term. So we have letters, persons, corporations, and they are linked together by unique keys and linked to outside over the GND, but I will come to this point later on. Okay, the metadata of letters or personal data are entered and edited through input forms. So here you can see an example. This is the input form for letters. including all relevant metadata. To see it better, I zoomed it here. Okay, it's this part, but in a larger zoom. And the other one is the input form for persons. And here you can see some relationships between persons. Okay, it's the example is Haeckel, clear. And for example, Alfred Walter, he was assistant of Haeckel. Preparing metadata. A comparison of the recorded data in the existing repository with the physical letters revealed a lot of mismatches concerning authorship, recipient, dating, location, format, and so on. Therefore, in addition to the structural adjustments, a profound substantive revision of the relevant metadata had to be started. A particularly serious challenge emerged stating letters if no date is given by the author. In this case, one can only use clues and indications given in the texts themselves to approximately date the letter. This process takes time and often ends up recording at first a vague date that can later be adjusted. Overall, the metadata of around 12,400 letters has been previously checked and corrected in parts or supplemented, and this process will also continue during the project. Research and standardization of personal data. The names given in the earlier 2005 repository, which formed the basis of our edition, were only recorded by autopsy in an inconsistent approach. Different versions of names had not been merged, and the headings of personal names had been generally made without any identification of the people concerned. However, the identification of persons is the essential basis for both the clear assignment of writer or recipient of letters, as well as for the comments and the personal register of the printed edition. Therefore, this had to be continuously revised and standardized on a large scale since the beginning of the project. In this context, after carefully merging different versions of names, all persons were isolated out of the preceding repository in a separate persons file and referenced backwards in the manner previously described by unique keys with corresponding letters. In the course of research, so as to identify persons and to complete personal data, various kinds of sources are used, both classical, such as archives, printed publications, and so on, and digital databases, such as the NDB or the German National Library. If the persons merge to these databases, all relevant data has to be compared and completed. Name headings have to be standardized according to their standards, and finally, they will be externally referenced to the fixed persons key of the Common Authority file GND. Unfortunately, a huge amount of people involved in Haeckel's correspondence, about 80%, I guess, did not emerge from these databases. In these cases, we recorded information from different sources according to the formal standards given by the Common Authority file. In this way, a lot of information for the characterization of biographical details of less well-known or unknown actors are already won and digitally provided to the scientific community in addition to existing databases. So here you can see an example. It's the Ingersoll family. They were proponents of the American free-thinking community. The free-thinking community or movement plays an important role in the reception of Haeckel's ideologization of biological sciences. And they involved Robert Green Ingersoll, the head of the family. He was an American lawyer and politician, and his wife and the niece. And we found it in the Robert Green Ingersoll Birthplace Museum at Dresden, Yates County, New York, and they gave us the information and recorded this information. But it's only an example. We have a lot of these persons. So far, there are already about 2,000 persons who have been more accurately identified and transferred in a standardized name, headings. Additionally, about 1,300 persons were externally referenced with the Common Authority File GND. In the course of research of personal data, 1,300 relationships between persons could previously be recognized and reported, which went beyond the correspondence relationship with Ernst Haeckel. This includes, for example, family, friends, scientific, or other professional relationships. Completing the correspondence, hunting for letters. The internal sources. As mentioned above, a large part of the Haeckel correspondence is still scattered outside of his literary deposit. The family correspondence constitutes the most complete part, forming the basic building block for Haeckel's biography, and will open the first volume of our print edition as well. That the manuscript transmission is presented here so seamlessly is due to the fact that Haeckel's mother, Charlotte Haeckel, at the end of 1870s undertook a personal review of the letters received by Haeckel's parents and preserved and designated most of them as a legacy to Jena. This corpus contains mainly letters from their son Ernst, but also his travelogues, books, drawings, and other interesting family letters. The external sources. With the help of an advanced financing, a preliminary research of external Haeckel correspondence at national and international levels was already started in October 2011 and still continues. A total of 500 institutions were approached, and the replies to the initial queries have meant that the stock of letters has been expanded to around 5,000 letters. The external sources of letters that still need to be researched, like in other correspondence projects, are further possible institutional deposits of correspondence and those in private ownership, as well as the historical or current market of autographs. These external sources mainly cover letters from Haeckel to other persons. Transcription. As previously said, the family correspondence of Ernst Haeckel is the starting point of the edition. So far, the entire correspondence from and to the parents has been described until the year 1869. In addition, other letters from a later period, all the other letters of friends, teachers, and known associates to and from Haeckel in the period until 1858 are also described. The previously transcribed collection includes about 1,900 items of correspondence and will be published online after the final editing. Some of the letters are already available online. So here you can see an example. This is a letter from Haeckel's father, Karl Gottlob, and his mother, sent to Haeckel. And if you've got good eyes, you can read here. It's November the 9th. Okay, we will make a test, or no? Yes, and it's very tricky. You need a lot of experience to read this. But we have in the project we have older colleagues, and they come with this experience, and they have this experience to read this, and it's very difficult. So the site of letter is not given in the text, so we had to make a guess. It's Berlin, because they lived in Berlin, and at this time they stayed at Berlin. So here's the second side, and these are the short words from the mother. Mein lieber Herzensernst, and so on. Okay. Top 6, early results, the online portal. The data volume of the anticipated items of correspondence makes a high demand on both the technical infrastructure as well as the implementation of the developmental level of the programming. Both the rapid processing of electronic search inquiries by users as well as the stable availability and long-term security of data requires that the online database from the start can be anchored at an institution with a profound core competence and technical infrastructure. In this context, the computer center of the University of Jena was obtained as a long-term cooperative partner for the development and hosting of the web platform and the online database. At the beginning of 2013, a partly reworked repertory of letters was made available and published on the website. Sorry, I didn't write it on the presentation. It's Haeckel-Briefwechsel-Projekt.uni-Jena, but you can write it in Google and you come to the letters, it's no problem. This includes as well a list of authors containing biographical data that has been subjected to refinement of characteristic details. After further steps, the new version of an online database equipped with a comprehensive search function of all relevant metadata in the letters and prepared for the later embedding of the letter's full text could be released in the spring of 2015. At the same time, the person list will be published online in full, including external links to the German National Library using the GND identifier. Access to the digital content is actually available in two ways. The user can both access via letters or persons. So here you can see the access via letters. It's not, it's different to see. And here is the access via persons. And then you come to different levels of the online database, and you can display the contents in the body of the page. Entering the repertory of letters, you get a list of all previously recognized letters in tabular form, and the relevant metadata is searchable and can be sorted out. So you here can see the fill out gaps for searching, and here you can see small arrows to sort out the metadata. I tell you, but you can't see it. Okay. By clicking on the corresponding letter, additional metadata and the contents are displayed. So here you can see what happens when you click on this. There's expand arrow, row expansion, and you can see the full text of the letter. It's maybe in summer it's also searchable in full text, but it's very difficult. Okay. So by entering the rubric persons, you get a list of persons who have been involved in direct correspondence with Ernst Haeckel or have been of particular relevance for the identification of authors and recipients. So this is the entry of the person lists. And again, the first entry is tabulated. The most important personal data are searchable, and the GND number, including a link, is shown. So here you can jump to the German National Library site. Okay, by clicking on the appropriate person, also expanded disclosures such as alternative forms of names, occupations, functions, or sites of action are displayed. In conclusion, I have first outlined the special opportunities and challenges of publication in the context of Haeckel's letters by digital media in a general way. In addition to that, I hope I could sketch some aspects of Haeckel's multifaceted legacy and therefore give you a short insight of practical measures and early results of the Ernst Haeckel correspondence project online. Thanks for your attention.